What makes someone successful? That is the question. And so through handwriting, the questions you want to ask is there anything in the handwriting which can increase a person's potential for success or perhaps increase a person's potential for failure? And this would specifically have to do with career advancement, employment. However, the same traits would apply to almost any goal, including interpersonal relationships. Did anybody here, after you've started learning handwriting, make any changes to your handwriting to improve your success? Really, what did you make? Amy?
Raised my T-bar and got rid of my fear of success.
You raised your T-bar and got rid of fear of success. Okay, anyone else do anything differently? What'd you do, Pradeep?
Raise the T-bars and enthusiasm.
Added enthusiasm. Is energy good for succeeding?
Yes.
Energy is great. And in fact, if you know anyone that's sick all the time, they're rarely successful because A, pain is very hard to overcome, but B, you don't have the energy. I mean, the Donald Trumps of the world get up at 5 and they stay to midnight and they work, and people like Gene Simmons never had a lick of alcohol in his life. He's one of the richest guys. I mean, there's a work ethic that takes energy, so that's a good trait. What other traits did you change that you added things to? Anybody here?
Raise T-bar.
T-bar, T-bar?
T-bar and dotting the I closer so I could remember what I'm reading.
That's handy to remember what you're supposed to be doing. Yes. Dotting the I closer, which is great. By the way, not necessarily a success trait for everything, but in certain careers. If you're going to be a heart surgeon, if I ever get plastic surgery, I want a doctor with very close eye dots. And big handwriting or small handwriting?
Small.
Why?
Concentration and focus.
But he's not as much fun. I want a fun doctor. No. I want a boring doctor who doesn't drink, goes to bed at night, and has close eye dots and small handwriting. That's what I want. So what's great about handwriting is you get to profile these people in career and success. Now, success is a slippery slope. You probably know people that are smart, they have PhDs, they're educated, and they can't run 2 dimes together, right? Why? Like, what's the difference? You know, it's like I said, it's a long answer to that question. Normally, I isolate a couple of things for people that have a lot of information but don't normally succeed. Is they usually have a corrupted belief system, is generally one of the major problems. Is they have belief systems about money, belief systems about religion, about succeeding, a belief system about their own self-image. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that can install that. And so, although today's lecture is not about that particular, we will get into a lecture, and of course, this would all be in the materials. I'm actually making the assumption if you're here in this room, or you're watching this tape, or you're listening to it at home, you have mastery of the primary traits. You have fundamental working knowledge of this alphabet we call graphology or handwriting. It's sort of like Egyptian hieroglyphics. I'm not an hieroglyphic, what do you call it, Egyptologist? What would be the official word for someone who reads hieroglyphics? Harrison Ford, okay. He likes to run from rolling stones and go through pyramids and look for tablets and stuff. Well, essentially handwriting is hieroglyphics. It's symbology. It's personality with symbols. And those symbols in the alphabet that we use, which is a Latin alphabet, Spanish and English and Australian and Italian and in American English and British English, those all have different alphabets. Or not funny, one of the two. It was either not funny or you didn't get it, I'm not sure. But I speak Australian and English. I write both, actually, equally as well. See, that worked better. That worked a little bit better. Those alphabet is a group of symbols, which, by the way, is not the only symbols. There are people, we have a school in Taiwan that has a book published in Chinese, which is Mandarin Chinese, which, by the way, I did bring 3 copies to raffle off if you would like one of my copy of books in Chinese, which, as far as I know, it is actually my book, but I can't prove it because I can't read it. So it could be like a guide to lovemaking, or it could be like Tantra 10 tick. I don't know, but it's got my picture on it and it's in Mandarin, so I figure it must be the right book. We'll give those away as well. She does do handwriting, graphology, using the Mandarin alphabet. But she normally uses Gestalt techniques, which is size, zone, spacing. She does say, you know, it's a pointy T-bar, it's a pointy end, it's a sarcasm, but it's somewhere else in the writing. Heavy handwriting means something. Long descenders mean something. So there is a complicated translation process to actually make it work. But it's not just the Arabic alphabet which we use. Okay? There's also a very successful woman in Israel that analyzes Arabic. Again, it's symbology. It's our unconscious mind projecting, and so that's what we are. We're basically analyzing tablets of human beings, and hopefully they'll come to life just like they do in the movies and tell us we're right. So flip to your thing. Let's go real quick through these. I believe you've seen most of these before, so I don't want to be redundant. I just want to hit some of the highlights. So the first slide here is the logo, which is amazing. You should absolutely memorize the logo. That's Robert there on the clicker. Thank you, Robert. Who's normally perfect, by the way. This is his first clicking job today, so he's going to get a little bit better. We talk about which personality traits are common on rich and happy people. Stinginess is actually not one of those traits, stinginess, but you would say self-esteem, the ability to take moderated risk, enthusiasm, etc. Does wealth create happiness? Probably not. I know some miserable rich people. I know a whole lot of miserable poor people. And I'll tell you, there's nothing to make you more unhappy than not being able to pay your bills. So I highly encourage whatever issues you have with being wealthy or making money to get over it as quickly as possible. It's just so much more fun to be able to pay your rent and pay your friends' dinner bills when it comes along. I recommend it. Can you have both? Absolutely. High self-esteem, that's the most common thing. I think the only flaw, if I were to criticize my entire career, is that unless you purchase the 301 course and you spend time really mastering this information, you might think it's as simple as raising a T-bar and you know everything you need to know. You might think that getting a deck of Grapho deck cards is in itself the entirety of graphology, and therefore whatever limitations you have to live with. That is not true. The Graphodex, since was published in 1989, has probably introduced more people to graphology than any single book in the world. It's been an amazing tool, but it is simply a very small mini dictionary of primary traits that are accurate, and I had to condense the entire definition into a poker-sized card. So it's very limited. So if those of you that are teachers now, you know, when you sell that product, let them know this is the tip of the iceberg. Like, this is not it's not the lexicon of graphology. It is a very tip of the iceberg. But if you memorize those and you know the traits in the purple trait dictionary, you'll probably pass your test on Saturday. It's not designed for you to look at these videos and know that this person won the lottery in 1984. That's not something you can tell and not something I expect of the test. Yes, ma'am.
Good metaphor for this would be?
A good metaphor for high self-image, anything as far as the ability to set goals, the ability to plan ahead into the future. You know, you're one of those guys who writes goals down and then achieves them. You know, not a fear of failure. I tend to avoid the not part, but I tend to focus on the self-esteem. The point about this is it's such a common trait. It is only one of 3 elements of self-image, 3 elements of self-esteem. And if you only were to raise your T-bar, you're still missing something. And I've noticed that when, maybe not just other teachers, but when people say, oh, I'm just going to raise the self-image, that's all I need, if their ego is still very tiny, then they don't have enough personal power and space to achieve things. So they end up dreaming and not taking action. If they don't have enthusiasm, that's something that really helps as well. Sometimes they underline their name, that's good. The personal pronoun I, another example of a healthy self-esteem. If you see someone with a high T-bar, but their capital I is a lowercase I and it's this big, there's some issues there, right? So you've got to stack these traits together, and I think those people that you know, don't dig in deeply like you have, they may think, oh, it's just one trait or the other, but as you'll see with the introductions to the people, it's all about trait stacking. So let's run through a couple more of these. These are things you know, and if you don't know them, you know, kind of like scoot to the person next to you and ask to explain it or make a note of it. Enthusiasm is the height, is the length of the T-bar, energy-wise. That will be anywhere in the handwriting, particularly the T-bar. Persistence, that is, of course, finishing what you start. I actually programmed this into my name, B-A-R-T. I made the little loop. It looked like a bow tie. It looked pretty silly for the first couple of years, and I think it looks pretty natural now. And it's served me very well. Somebody says, well, I didn't know you did acting. And I said, well, yeah, I've been doing it. I've been, you know, auditioning a little bit. He goes, that's just cool. I mean, is it easy? I said, Well, the acting was actually pretty simple. It was the 130 auditions that nobody hired me on before I got a job. Persistence is exactly that. It never occurred to me to just give up. And so now, years later, there's some reward there. So it's a handy trait to have. And it's easy to program in. I haven't seen too many side effects as far as negative for persistence. Just finish what you start, unless you're a serial killer. Well, you would be better at being a serial killer. You'd be much more effective. I just don't know if that's really a benefit to society unless you're a writer for CSI, and maybe you have better writing.